Well, we got introduced a number of years ago and I read your book, Ditch the Pitch. Fantastic book. And,
Thank you.
sometimes, yeah, congratulations. It's just great. And it really synthesizes all of the things that I think I learned early on in my career through many different methods of the good old corporate sales training you get, right? So here we sit now in talking about the real estate profession and mainly to real estate professionals. And we're talking today in particular about this element of the life of a real estate professional called negotiating. Okay.
Right.
And as you and I have talked, there's so many layers to this
Mhm.
idea of negotiating, and why I wanted to talk in particular with you about this, and not, the great books written about negotiation. We all know Getting to Yes. I think, if you pull most of us, we read it very early in our
Sure.
careers. Very famous book on negotiating, but what makes the profession of real estate so different than, say, the attorney is it's constantly happening. This
Oh,
idea of communicating and negotiating, right?
certainly. I mean, if you look at the fact that the real estate professional's success depends so much on building relationships with people, other agents, their clients, whether they're buyers or sellers. And through those relationships, you're constantly having conversations that bring your relationship forward. So there are many steps of negotiation. There's those big negotiations that close the sale, but there's many steps along the way you're trying to persuade other people to do. Like I said earlier, we got to take this whole idea of convincing people. You can't just make a great statement, an argument, and convince somebody. That's not the way the world works today. We're all so
Right.
you making decisions for ourselves. But what you can do is figure out what's this person's path to saying yes to you or to agreeing with you, and find how to nurture them along that path through conversations.
Exactly. And so one of the ways that I thought we could construct our conversation is through your book, right? You have
Mhm.
these habits. And
Mhm.
so if you can take a minute and really walk through these habits, right? Habits 1 through 6.
Sure. The concept of ditch the pitch is based on developing 6 habits that get you so confident that you can create the perfect conversation for whoever you're speaking with. It's really about improvising conversations. We need to have some good habits so that we have the basics of conversation down and we can just focus on improvising the nuances for this person. And the first couple of habits are about figuring out what's going on. Habit number 1 is called think input before output. And let's face it, most people when they're selling or engaging customers, think about output before input. Let me tell you what I got and then get your feedback. We want to flip that around 180 degrees, input before output. The second habit is called size at the scene. It's really about saying, okay, as I'm gathering this input, what's going on? Who is this person I'm speaking with? What's influencing them? What do they really care about? You're always walking in the middle of somebody's story, their life story, and you got to size up the scene and say, what's happening with this person? So those first 2 habits are about figuring out what's happening. I like to recommend to people to think about how curiosity is your superpower. Figure out what's happening. The next 2 habits are about creating a flowing conversation with lots of momentum. Habit 3 is called create a series of yeses, which is so important for negotiation. If you think about it, a conversation with a customer, a client, or a relationship with them, even if you expand to that scale, it's all about getting a series of yeses going where you continually are getting affirmation and agreement from them to keep moving forward, creating a series of yeses. And habit 4 is called explore and heighten. Find out what that person cares about and take the conversation to a higher level. Our fifth habits recognizes that people care more about themselves than they care about you. Let's face it, they do. It's called habit 5 is called focus the conversation on your customer. We teach people to make 95% of the conversation about the other person. When you do that, you've not only got their interest, you find out what they really care about, and then you can weave your story together with them. And habit 6 is very important for negotiation. It's called don't rush the story. You may want to move quickly, but if you try to move faster than the other person, you'll actually slow the process down. You got to be very attuned to what pace they're comfortable moving in.
Well, that's terrific. I mean, I'm sitting here taking notes just as you're talking. I'm reminded of these habits. And listen, I think just like anything else, you've got to practice this, right?
Mhm.
Like you can't just assume you're going to read a book or try to do something new and suddenly you're just able to do it. Can you talk a little bit about where improv comes in for you here? Because I thought as I've, looked at what you've put together in this book and the training that I've had and put in place, this idea that you're improvising the person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's you got to improvise because every customer is different. Every person you deal with, and I'm using customer in a very broad sense.
Sure.
Another agent is your customer, a client's your customer. The fact is, anybody you need to persuade to do things that'll help you succeed, consider them a customer. Let's use the word customer very broadly. And you realize that every customer is a unique human being, and every situation is different, meaning each customer, each person you deal with is different day to day. So you have to tear up your script, ditch the pitch, and be ready to adapt to whatever this situation demands. And we're all good at this. I mean, we're all good improvisers. We improvise our whole life. We're always improvising when we're driving, cooking, talking to friends. Why not do it in our business conversations?
So
Now,
why not? Why don't people do it?
because it's a really interesting thing. People could be totally loose with their friends and talking and just having a conversation. Let's face it, nobody does a script before they go out with their friends on Saturday night, do they? Of
Right.
course, not, right? But then we get in a business setting, we think, oh, this is how I'm supposed to do it. I've got my PowerPoint deck. I've got my marketing materials. Let me walk people through it. No. The the main principle of Ditch the Pitch is to turn every presentation into a conversation that matters to the other person. Don't make any presentations, only have conversations that matter to other people. And the only way you can create a conversation that matters to another person is to be adapting to what they really care about. You can't know that before you get in the conversation. So, why do we need habits to improvise? Because humans are great improvisers, but also 30 to 40% of our behavior is habitual. It may seem contradictory because habits are about things you do repeatedly, and improv is something you do uniquely. It's not contradictory because what the habits do, they give you a platform of good conversational skills like responding to what somebody says, have the habit of letting them talk more than you. And then you can improvise the details of this conversation on top of that bed of habits. But improv is incredibly important because you just don't know what's happening until you get in the conversation with this person. And throughout the conversation, they're throwing you curveballs, new information comes up, you have to adapt to it.